This is the RX 6700 XT, and today we're here to test if this is the best 1440p budget graphics card in 2025. I know what you're thinking, the 6700 XT, why not just go with the B580? Why not go with the B580 for 1440p? It has everything the 6700 XT has, but it's newer, and it's by Intel, and it has all the new Intel features like XeSS, the upscaler, and it has AV1 encoding. Well, you want to go with this because the B580, it just isn't mature enough. The drivers aren't good enough. The reliance on resizable bar and SAM as the main way to get FPS. Because if you have like an older CPU, like an i5 90 ninth gen and below, pretty much, you will not have access to it. And even some AM4 platforms like first and second gen AM4. So if you're on a CPU like the Ryzen 5 2600, you're not going to be able to just take advantage of that. And that's really what you're going to want to do for that type of CPU. You won't be able to because you won't have access to SAM. But with this card, you can run it natively without SAM. Even though I do recommend having SAM on / resizable bar, I do recommend having it on. It's not a requirement. And H.265 on this card is amazing. The quality that you get out of the recording is amazing. Relive, amazing features. The AMD software, honestly, is way better than NVIDIA's at this point. I don't see any major differences between that. I mean, the only real thing that you're missing out on is filters. And at this point, I think there are other softwares that can accomplish that without as much of an FPS loss as NVIDIA filters cause. And I think this card is just perfect for 1440p gaming. 1440p is like the really good middle ground between 4K and 1080p. And 4K just isn't something that you can do with this card because it's so budget. So if you can really find this card for around $200 to $250, I think this thing is better than the B580. And another thing about the B580, it is being scalped to all hell right now. So if you can't pick it up for the original $259 MSRP, and you only see it for maybe $300, $320, don't bother picking it up. And be economically viable. Pick this thing up used on eBay or on Facebook Marketplace for around the $200 to $250 mark, and you're all good. So let's go ahead and start getting into benchmarks, and then we can see how this really does perform in 2025. For today's benchmark with the RX 6700 XT, I picked some games that would be really popular in 2025. Games that aren't out, like GTA 6, I won't be able to test because they're not out. So I picked out games that I thought would be really popular going into 2025 for multiplayer games. So I picked out Fortnite, Marvel Rivals, which is a game I've really been a fan of recently, and Black Ops 6, which isn't as big as it used to be, but it's still Call of Duty, so it will be popular. So I tested out Call of Duty and Marvel Rivals using FSR, and I did Call of Duty without FSR as well, just to test it out, because FSR is really big thing. That's another thing that you get with the 6700 XT is access to FSR. So I ran FSR on balance for Marvel Rivals, and I capped the FPS at 120 because that's really the main thing that you want to do for Marvel Rivals is to get better latency, because FPS is just not great. Even the 4090 struggles to get 200 plus FPS on that game, and then still you get a bunch of lag, like input lag, so you don't want to do with that. And I use FSR 3 quality for Black Ops 6 / Warzone, and I also use Fidelity FXCast for that as well. Fortnite, it's more CPU based, but still you will see the FPS be a bit better because of the graphics card. And that's pretty much it. And the test bench that I'm using for this is my main PC, R7 5800 X3D, and I'm using 32 gigabytes of 3600 megahertz RAM, and that's pretty much all that's important for this. So I hope y'all enjoy it, and let's get straight into the benchmarks. Let's start with Marvel Rivals first. Here are the settings we use for Marvel Rivals. FSR at the balance preset, native 1440p. Here is the benchmark for Marvel Rivals at 1440p. We are using FSR at balanced because that is what people have been typically telling me to do for Marvel Rivals. I've been playing this game a little bit. I think I'm really enjoying it. It's pretty much an Overwatch clone, but it is really good. So I hope y'all enjoy this at 1440p. And we were getting anywhere from 120 FPS and a 1% low at 85 FPS. I did cap the frame rate at 120 FPS because If you go any higher than that, you are going to see latency, and latency is directly related to damage for some reason. I think they might have fixed it prior to this video, but hopefully I think it should be fine. This card is starting to show a little bit of its age in this situation with a game that just came out pretty much in 2025. It came out prior to this, but it pretty much came out in 2025, let's be honest. And we weren't really seeing any dips in action. We might have seen a little dip below 120 to maybe something closer to 90, maybe even sometimes high 80s, but that's only during ults and things like that. I did run into an issue in a separate game with the Doctor Strange ultimate that caused very high FPS drops all the way down to maybe 70, but I think that's more of a game thing, because it's just not nearly as optimized as it should be because it's on Unreal Engine 5. But ultimately, I do think this card can really still handle it at 1440p. If you were to play it at 1080p, I would imagine all those issues that I was having would be gone because of the increased frame rate. But other than that, I don't think there's any other problems, and I think that's pretty much it for Marvel Rivals at 1440p. Here are the settings I was using in Black Ops 6 and Warzone. Just changed the render to Fidelity FX Cast to get what I was using. For all the tests I did of Warzone and Black Ops 6, I either used the all low preset mixed in with a few choice settings that did improve FPS. Keep in mind, this did used to be my main game, so I know a little bit about optimization in game and what settings do what and how it affects FPS. Ultimately, I do believe that FPS could be improved slightly because of the recording and the kind of toll it takes on the GPU. We were seeing peaks of about 100% on the GPU and 2500 megahertz. This all is with a slight overclock, undervolt / overclock. You're not seeing much of a difference in performance, but you are seeing quite a big difference in temperatures and wattage. So ultimately, I do think that Warzone is really playable, and Call of Duty at Black Ops 6. You really aren't seeing very mumuch of a difference between FSR3 quality and Fidelity FX Cast, besides a little bit of sharpness and maybe give or take 5-6 FPS for FSR. So typically, I don't like to use FSR in games like this, besides games that do not run very well. But with this PC and GPU combination, keep in mind I'm using the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D. This is not the best configuration, but it is still a very playable configuration if you're looking for a 120 hertz almost console-like experience. Things like this are really what matter to me, FPS wise. Call of Duty, things like that, multi FPS games where frames really do matter, but I would say this is a fairly competitive experience. You can get a really competitive experience out of this. If you were to run the game at 1080p, you would really be seeing 160, 180 FPS. I wish I could test 1080p on these cards, but I do have a 1440p 240 hertz monitor, so I didn't want to downgrade the quality for myself just to see a little bit of a frame rate increase. And this card really was not made for 1080p, so you really want to just try things out at 1440p. Keep in mind, Black Ops 6 is really not that optimized. It is optimized for AMD cards, but it's really not that optimized for medium range cards in general. You can only really get 200 plus FPS on $700 plus cards on this if you're not running FSR3 or frame generation. I would try frame generation, but it really is not indicative of a very competitive experience. If you want to play like the campaign with frame generation, knock yourself out, but the added latency just is a little bit too much, and the frames do not feel real because they are AI generated and like interpolated between like actual frames. Things like this, you're really gonna run into a lot of stutters. The reason you want to run FSR3 on Warzone compared to Black Ops 6, where you can get away with using Fidelity FX Cast, is because of the stutters that you get playing on the maps, because the maps are so large and they're so detailed that you do run into some issues like that. And that is pretty much it for the Black Ops 6 / Warzone benchmark, and let's move into the next one. Now moving into the final benchmark, we have our Fortnite benchmark. We were playing Fortnite at 1440p performance mode, all low, and we were seeing anywhere from 400 FPS up to 500 and averaging around 370 to 380 in Fortnite on the OG map. This is on the OG map, so I've heard that Chapter 6 map is a little less optimized and you could run into some issues, but other than that, I didn't really have any problems. And other than a few choice stutters and maybe some dips into 200 FPS while getting shot at, it's really a really high refresh rate experience. If you're running at 1080p, I could imagine getting all the way up to maybe 600 FPS average. But I do typically prefer using 1080p at a 75% render scale for Fortnite because of the less delay that you get for Fortnite. And I do think I should do some more testing with that because I feel like people are more likely to use 1080p on Fortnite as compared to other games, even if they have a 1440p capable graphics card and monitor. And that is it for the Fortnite benchmark. To wrap things up, I just want to say the RX 6700 XT, if you can find it from anywhere from $200 to about $250, I think it might be the best 1440p graphics card that you can buy in 2025. But if you can find an RTX 3070, even a 2080 Ti, or maybe a 4060 Ti for anywhere from maybe $280 to $340, if you can find something like that, pick it up. But the RX 6700 XT is the best performance-wise for the $200 to $250 budget range of graphics cards. I picked up mine for $200, so can you. Check out eBay. I'll put a couple links in the description of cards, RX 6700 XT cards that you can pick up for around that price in the description. I hope y'all enjoy. Make sure y'all go check out all my other socials in my link tree, and I'll see y'all later. Bye, guys.